My name is Claire Avery, and I am 34 years old. At exactly 2 a.m., my front door slammed against the wall, and 2 police officers stepped inside with an arrest warrant. Estate, snorts, fraud, you're coming with us. I did not argue. I did not ask why my parents were already standing in the driveway, fully dressed, smiling like they had been waiting for a curtain to rise. I did not ask why my sister had her phone raised before the officers touched my wrists. Her Livestream counter climbed so fast it looked broken. 400,000, 700,000, then 1 million viewers watching me walk barefoot across my porch in handcuffs. My mother covered a laugh. My father leaned toward the camera and said, "Some people finally get what they deserve." My sister turned the screen toward me, hungry for a reaction. "Smile, Claire. The whole world is meeting the real you." I looked into the lens and said nothing. That silence made her grin wider. 15 minutes later, I sat beneath fluorescent lights at the central precinct while an officer printed my fingerprints. Then the police chief walked through the door, saw me, and stopped so suddenly the folder in his hand hit the floor. His face went pale. "My God," he whispered, "why is she here?" Every officer froze. The chief looked at my handcuffs, then at the warrant, and his expression changed from shock to fury. "Take those off her, now." Before I tell you why he knew my name and why my sister's million-view live stream became the evidence that destroyed her, tell me what time it is where you are, where you're watching from, and what the weather is like. I want to see how far this story travels. The chief's name was Marcus Hale, and I knew him because 6 months earlier, he had signed the protection order attached to a confidential state investigation called Operation Lantern. I was not a detective, an undercover officer, or anyone important enough to expect a dramatic rescue. I was a forensic accountant who specialized in probate disputes, which usually meant spending long days tracing transfers through dead people's bank accounts while grieving relatives lied across conference tables. Operation Lantern began after I found the same 3 shell companies appearing in 7 unrelated estates. Each estate belonged to an elderly person who had died with substantial property. Each family had been represented by the same probate attorney, and each file contained a last-minute amendment that shifted control to someone who had never been mentioned in the original plan. The names were different, but the fraud had the same fingerprints. One of those estates belonged to my grandmother, Evelyn Avery. Chief Hale crossed the booking room and placed himself between me and the officers. "Who authorized this?" he demanded. The younger officer pointed to the warrant. Hale read the first page, then the supporting affidavit, and his jaw tightened. The complaint accused me of diverting $920,000 from my grandmother's trust into a consulting company I secretly controlled. It also claimed I planned to destroy the records before a probate hearing scheduled for 9 o'clock that morning. That last sentence explained the timing. Someone had convinced a night magistrate that waiting until daylight would allow me to erase evidence. The affidavit included screenshots of transfers, copies of emails bearing my name, and a statement from a family member who claimed to have seen me shredding documents. On paper, it looked urgent. It also looked convincing enough to ruin me. "What family member?" I asked. The officer hesitated. Hale turned another page. "Your sister. Her name was Tessa Avery. She was 37, 3 years older than me, and had built a career online by turning private pain into public entertainment. She reviewed luxury hotels, family dinners, staged tearful confessions, and called the entire performance radical honesty. Almost everything in her life was edited, lit, and monetized. Our parents, Richard and Elaine Avery, loved her audience because it made them feel famous by association. They appeared in holiday videos, accepted free vacations, and laughed whenever Tessa humiliated someone under the excuse that her followers deserved authenticity. I had stopped appearing on her channel 2 years earlier after she filmed me receiving news that a client had died. She, snorts, posted the clip anyway with a sad piano track and the caption, "When your work finally breaks you." It reached 2 million views. I told her never to use my face again. She told me privacy was what irrelevant people demanded when nobody cared enough to watch. That night, she had titled the live stream, "My Sister, the Estate Thief, Arrested Live." She had not arrived by accident. My parents had not happened to be standing outside my house at 1 o'clock in the morning. They had known the police were coming, which meant someone inside the investigation had warned them. That frightened Chief Hale more than the warrant itself. He ordered the booking room secured, collected every officer's phone, and called Assistant Attorney General Dana Ruiz, the prosecutor overseeing Operation Lantern. While he spoke, I watched the live stream replay on a computer. Tessa had positioned herself at the end of my driveway before the police cars turned onto my street. She whispered to viewers that justice was minutes away. My mother held a paper cup of coffee. My father checked his watch. When the officers arrived, Tessa widened her eyes and pretended to be shocked, but she had already chosen the camera angle. She captured the front door, my porch, and the patrol cars in one frame. She also captured something she had not intended. As the officers led me toward the car, my father leaned close to my mother and muttered, "By breakfast, the trust is ours." He probably thought the siren covered his voice. It did not. Thousands of viewers heard him. Within minutes, people clipped the sentence, slowed it down, amplified it, and posted it beneath the stream. Tessa deleted several comments, but every deletion created more copies. Dana arrived at the precinct wearing jeans under a wool coat, her hair pulled back as if she had dressed while running. She did not comfort me. She took the warrant, read it once, and asked Chief Hale to pull the access log from my protected witness file. The log showed that the warning flag attached to my name had been removed at 11:42 p.m. by a supervisor's account. Without that flag, the patrol officers saw only a valid warrant. With it, they would have been required to call Hale before approaching my house. "Can you release her?" Dana asked. Hale shook his head. "Not until the magistrate withdraws the warrant or the district judge quashes it. I can remove the cuffs and stop questioning, but technically she remains detained." I had spent my career telling clients that the law moved on documents, not outrage. Now I was trapped inside that truth. Hale unlocked my handcuffs, moved me to his office, and stationed an officer outside the door. Dana sat across from me and asked the question that mattered. "How much does your family know?" "They know I refused to approve the sale of my grandmother's commercial property," I said. "They know I challenged the new will. They know I copied the trust records. They do not know about Operation Lantern. Then someone else does." I thought of the probate attorney who had handled our family's affairs for 20 years, Grant Weller. He had drafted the amendment that gave my father control of nearly every asset. He had also represented 4 of the estates tied to the shell companies. When I first raised concerns, he smiled and told me grief was making me suspicious. 2 weeks later, my office was broken into, but only one drawer had been opened. The drawer containing my grandmother's documents. Dana placed a recorder on Hale's desk. "Start at the beginning." The beginning was not the arrest. It was 11 months earlier when my grandmother died and left behind 2 wills, 1 missing ledger, and a family that became impatient before her funeral flowers had wilted. I looked through the glass wall at the officers whispering in the booking room. Outside, my sister was still broadcasting to more than 1 million strangers celebrating the end of my life. She did not realize she had just provided the state with a time-stamped record of a conspiracy. She thought the handcuffs were the ending. They were the first piece of evidence. Grandmother Evelyn had never trusted easy explanations. She kept duplicate receipts, wrote dates on the backs of photographs, and saved every handwritten note anyone gave her. When I was 12, she caught Tessa blaming me for a broken crystal bowl. Grandmother Snorts did not ask which one of us was lying. She checked the dust on the cabinet, found Tessa's bracelet clasped beneath it, and made her tell the truth in front of our parents. My father called the lesson cruel. Grandmother called it accountability. Years later, that same habit of preserving evidence became the reason my family could not simply rewrite her final wishes. Her estate was worth about $8.4 million, but most of that value was tied up in property. The brick house where she had lived for 40 years, 2 small commercial buildings in downtown Richmond, and a wooded parcel outside the city that developers had wanted for years. Her original trust divided the income equally among my father, Tessa, and me, while placing the house and wooded land into a charitable foundation after our deaths. Tessa hated that arrangement because she wanted immediate cash. My father hated it because he believed inheritance belonged to blood, not charity. My mother rarely said what she wanted, but she had already chosen new furniture for grandmother's house before the funeral. 3 days after the burial, Grant Weller gathered us in his office and presented a restated trust dated 6 weeks before grandmother died. Under that version, my father became sole trustee. Tessa received the house. My mother received the commercial properties, and I received $25,000 on the condition that I signed a full release. I studied the signature page while Tessa filmed herself crying with gratitude. The signature looked like grandmother's, but the pressure pattern was wrong. Her final stroke had always lifted sharply because arthritis locked her thumb. On the restated trust, the line curved smoothly. I asked who witnessed it. Grant named 2 employees from his office. I asked for the original. He said it was being stored off-site. My father told me not to embarrass the family. Tessa turned her camera toward me and asked why I could not be happy for everyone else. I said nothing, photographed every page, and refused to sign the release. That was when their treatment of me changed from dismissive to hostile. Invitations stopped. My mother sent messages saying grandmother would be ashamed of my greed. My father warned that challenging the trust would expose things I didn't understand. Tessa produced 3 videos about unnamed relatives who weaponized grief for money. She never said my name, but she used childhood photographs with my face blurred just enough to make the identification obvious. I began with the property records. 2 months before grandmother's death, someone had opened a $620,000 line of credit against 1 commercial building. The money moved through Rosebridge Consulting, then split into payments for Tessa's production studio, my parents' mortgage arrears, and a deposit on a lake house. The loan documents carried grandmother's signature, although hospital records showed she was sedated in intensive care when they were signed. Grant had notarized them. I traced Rosebridge to a mailbox service, then to an account opened with a copy of my driver's license. That was the first attempt to make me the owner of their shell company. The second came after I requested a formal accounting. An email appeared in the trust file instructing the bank to send $920,000 to Rosebridge. It was written in my style, signed with my name, and sent from an address differing from mine by 1 letter. The forged transfer screenshots used in my arrest warrant came from that file. My family had not invented the accusation overnight. They had been building it for months. I did not confront them. Instead, I gave the records to Dana Ruiz, who compared Rosebridge with other probate cases. The same notary stamp, the same bank officer, and the same pattern appeared again and again. Dana obtained a sealed order allowing me to continue acting as if I were conducting a private trust review, while investigators watched the accounts. Chief Hale added the protected witness flag after someone followed me home twice. Only 6 people knew. 1 week before my arrest, I found the missing ledger. Grandmother had hidden it inside the false bottom of a wooden recipe box she left specifically to me. It listed dates, names, property numbers, and payments spanning 18 years. At the back was a flash drive containing scanned checks and a video recorded 3 months before her death. In the video, grandmother sat upright in her library and spoke directly to the camera. She said my father and Grant had pressured her to sign loans, that my mother had concealed statements, and that Tessa had accepted money while knowing where it came from. Then she said, "Claire is the only one who refused to take what was not hers." I gave the original ledger and drive to Dana. I kept a sealed copy in a safe deposit box and scheduled an automatic release to 3 attorneys if I failed to cancel it by 9 o'clock every morning. My family must have learned that I planned to present evidence at the probate hearing, but they did not know the originals were already beyond their reach. So they chose the one strategy Tessa understood best: create a public verdict before a judge could hear the facts. At 1 o'clock in the morning, they gave 1 million people a villain in handcuffs. By sunrise, I intended to give the court a conspiracy with names, account numbers, and timestamps. At 4:18 a.m., the night magistrate joined a secure video call from his home. Dana presented the protected witness order, the altered access log, and the unedited clip of my father saying the trust would be theirs by breakfast. The magistrate's confidence disappeared as he compared the affidavit with the original bank records. The screenshots used to accuse me had cropped out the receiving account's ownership page. The full page showed Rosebridge was opened using a scanned copy of my license, but authenticated from an internet address assigned to my parents' house. The emergency claim that I was destroying records came from Tessa, who admitted in the affidavit that she had not entered my home in more than a year. By 4:41, the warrant was withdrawn. By 4:47, Chief Hale had opened an internal investigation into who removed the flag from my file. I could have gone home, but there was no point. The probate hearing began in 4 hours, and my driveway was still crowded with reporters attracted by Tessa's live stream. Dana arranged for me to enter the courthouse through the secured garage. I changed into a spare navy suit she kept in her office and washed the fingerprint ink from my hands, although a gray stain remained around my nails. I left it there. I wanted the judge to see what the false affidavit had done. At 9 o'clock, Judge Renata Bishop entered a courtroom packed beyond capacity. Tessa sat beside our parents at the petitioner's table, dressed in cream and speaking quietly to her phone before a deputy ordered her to turn it off. Grant Weller arranged folders in front of them and smiled when I walked in. He had not yet learned the warrant was gone. My father whispered something to Tessa, and all three looked toward my wrists, expecting handcuffs. Judge Bishop called the matter and asked why the acting co-trustee had reportedly been arrested. Grant stood and described me as a flight risk who had stolen estate funds. He requested my immediate removal, approval of the restated trust, and authority to sell the wooded parcel to a development company by noon. His urgency was the mistake. The proposed buyer was another company connected to Rosebridge. My attorney, Naomi Calder, rose beside me. She introduced the order quashing the warrant, then asked permission to call Chief Hale. Hale testified that I had been detained on evidence now believed to be fabricated, that a confidential law enforcement alert had been improperly removed, and that the arrest was connected to an active corruption inquiry. The courtroom went silent. Grant objected so quickly that he knocked over his water. Naomi then displayed the full transfer records. She showed the false email address, the login from my parents' home, and payments from Rosebridge to Tessa's studio. Tessa shook her head and mouthed that she knew nothing. Naomi played 30 seconds from the live stream. My father's voice filled the courtroom. By breakfast, the trust is ours. My mother closed her eyes. Tessa stared at the table. Grant argued that an overheard sentence proved nothing. Naomi agreed. Then she handed the judge grandmother's ledger under seal. Judge Bishop read the first 2 pages, stopped, and looked directly at Grant. She ordered every estate account frozen, suspended him from acting as trust counsel, prohibited the sale or transfer of any property, and appointed an independent fiduciary. She also directed the clerk to preserve all live stream footage and referred the matter to the state attorney general and the bar. My parents were ordered to leave grandmother's house within 72 hours because they had moved in without authorization. Tessa's production company was barred from receiving another dollar from the estate. Outside the courtroom, Tessa tried to recover control. She turned on her phone and told her viewers that I had manipulated the police chief, intimidated a judge, and stolen our grandmother's private papers. But her audience had already watched the morning unfold through reporters. Comments flooded the screen asking about Rosebridge and repeating my father's sentence. Her sponsor for a national skincare brand terminated its contract before she reached the courthouse steps. A travel company paused its campaign an hour later. She pushed through the crowd and reached me near the elevators. "You planned this," she hissed. "No," I said. "You planned my arrest. I preserved it." For the first time, she did not have a clever answer. Her phone was still streaming from her lowered hand, capturing every word. I glanced at the lens. "You should probably save that recording, too." That afternoon, search warrants were executed at Grant's office, my parents' home, and Tessa's studio. Investigators seized computers, phones, notary seals, and a shredder bin filled with partially destroyed bank statements. The arrest meant to silence me had given Dana probable cause to search the places she had been watching for months. My family had wanted a spectacle. They had created one, but the cameras were no longer pointed at me. The searches changed the case faster than any confrontation could have. Investigators found a second phone hidden inside a lighting case at Tessa's studio. It contained a private group chat named Breakfast Club, created by Grant and used by my father, my mother, Tessa, and a police sergeant named Nolan Vick. The messages covered 6 months. They discussed the fake Rosebridge account, the forged emails, the night magistrate schedule, and the exact minute officers should arrive at my house. Tessa had written, "I need cuffs in frame before 1:05 or the audience drops." My mother replied with a laughing emoji. My father asked whether the arrest would remove me from the hearing automatically. Grant assured them that public pressure would make the judge afraid to defend me. Vic's final message read, "Flag deleted. Patrol won't call Hale." The million-view livestream was not merely embarrassing evidence, it synchronized the conspiracy. Tessa announced that police were coming before the warrant had been entered into the department's public system. Her father's comment revealed the financial motive. Her camera showed my mother holding a folder later recovered from Grant's office. Viewers had screen-recorded everything, including a 90-second period when Tessa believed she had muted the stream. During that gap, she told my parents, "Once Claire is charged, nobody will trust anything she brings to court." My father answered, "That's the whole point." Tessa's fiancé, Adrian Knox, learned about the group chat from the search warrant. He had believed Rosebridge was a legitimate management company handling sponsorship income. When investigators showed him that his electronic signature appeared on a loan application he had never seen, he hired his own lawyer and began cooperating. He provided invoices proving Tessa used estate money to inflate her channel's revenue, purchase followers, and lease luxury cars she presented as personal property. He also turned over a voice note she sent the night before my arrest. "Tomorrow I finally get rid of my sister, and the house becomes ours." 2 days later, he ended their engagement and moved out. Tessa posted a video accusing me of destroying her relationship. It received more corrections than supportive comments. My parents responded differently. My father became aggressive. He called relatives, former clients, and members of grandmother's church, insisting I had forged the ledger because I hated being less successful than Tessa. My mother became quiet. She sent me 7 messages asking to meet privately and deleted each one before I could answer. I ignored both of them until Naomi told me the independent fiduciary had discovered something worse than the theft from grandmother's estate. For nearly 2 decades, my father had persuaded elderly clients to appoint Grant as attorney and himself as financial advisor. After each client died, property was sold below market value to companies connected to them. The difference was hidden through renovation invoices, consulting fees, and charitable donations routed through a family foundation my mother managed. Grandmother discovered the pattern when one of her friends lost a house intended for her disabled son. She began collecting records. That was why her ledger contained names from outside our family. Her estate was not the first target. It was the last attempt to bury the scheme. I remembered being 26 and working briefly for my father's accounting firm. He once asked me to backdate a valuation for a widow's property. I refused and resigned the next morning. For years, my parents described that decision as proof that I was disloyal and unstable. Grandmother had called me that evening and said, "Never let people who profit from your silence define your character." I had not understood how much she knew. The state offered my mother a limited opportunity: surrender the foundation records, identify hidden accounts, and receive consideration for cooperation. She asked to speak with me first. Dana warned that the request might be emotional manipulation. Naomi insisted the meeting occur in a monitored conference room. I agreed because I wanted one answer that no ledger could provide. When my mother entered, she looked smaller than she had in the driveway. But I reminded myself that she had smiled while officers closed handcuffs around my wrists. She sat across from me and said, "I never thought they would actually arrest you." "You brought coffee," I replied. "You knew you would be waiting." Her face tightened. I placed a printed screenshot between us. It showed her message in the Breakfast Club chat. "Let her spend one night scared. Maybe then she'll sign." She stared at it for a long time. "Your father said the warrant would be withdrawn after the hearing. And you believe that made it acceptable?" "I believed we were protecting what belonged to this family." "No," I said. "You were protecting what you stole." She began to cry, but I did not rescue her from the silence. After a minute, she whispered, "There is another ledger. Richard keeps it somewhere Grant cannot reach." That was the first truthful thing she gave me. It was also the sentence that ended my father's control over the family. My mother told investigators the second ledger was hidden behind a removable panel in the wine cellar of my parents' house. The search team found it inside a fireproof case beside cash, old passports, and property deeds bearing names of people who had never met my father. The ledger documented 23 estates, more than $12 million in diverted assets, and payments to Grant, Sergeant Vick, a bank officer, and 2 court clerks. It also contained a column labeled E, with amounts that matched deposits into the foundation my mother controlled. She had not been a frightened spouse standing near the crime. She had balanced the books. When Dana confronted her, my mother stopped asking for sympathy. She surrendered passports, explained the coded entries, and admitted she had helped create the fake documents used against me. She claimed Tessa designed the Livestream and Grant arranged the warrant, but she acknowledged approving the plan because she believed humiliation would force me to sign away my rights. Her cooperation helped investigators recover nearly $4 million before it moved offshore. It did not erase what she had done. My father was arrested at a private airport 3 days later with 2 suitcases and a one-way ticket to the Cayman Islands. He told agents he was traveling for business. Inside one suitcase were bearer bonds, grandmother's jewelry, and the original seal from her trust. Grant, Snorts, was arrested in his office after trying to wipe a laptop remotely. Sergeant Vick was taken into custody at the precinct where I had been booked. The younger patrol officer who had handcuffed me asked to speak with me afterward. He apologized for not questioning the timing. I told him the warrant had been designed to fool him. The responsibility belonged to the people who created it, and the supervisor who removed the warning. Tessa refused every opportunity to cooperate. She posted daily videos portraying herself as the victim of a vindictive sister and a corrupt government. Each video contradicted the evidence a little more. In one, she claimed she had learned about the arrest from a neighbor, although her own time-stamped messages showed she helped schedule it. In another, she said Rosebridge had never paid her company, but investigators had bank records showing 38 transfers. Her lawyers begged her to stop posting. She responded by secretly recording a strategy meeting and uploading edited clips. They withdrew from the case the next morning. 2 weeks after the arrests, grandmother's video was played during a sealed evidentiary hearing. Hearing her voice nearly broke the control I had maintained since the night of the live stream. She described my father's pressure, my mother's accounting, and Tessa's willingness to use her audience as a weapon. Then she looked directly into the camera. Claire, they will tell you that exposing them destroys the family. Remember this. The person who reveals a fire did not start it. That sentence ended the last argument I had been having with myself. I had spent years believing endurance was the price of belonging. I had accepted insults, exclusions, and public humiliation because confronting them seemed more destructive than absorbing them. But silence had not protected the family. It had protected the people stealing from vulnerable strangers. My mother asked for one final private conversation before entering her plea. I agreed, but I did not go alone, and I did not permit phones. She said she loved me, that she had always loved me, and that fear had made her weak. I told her fear could explain hesitation, but not 6 months of planning, forged evidence, and a smile in my driveway. "Can you ever forgive me?" she asked. "I may eventually stop carrying anger," I said. "That is not the same as giving you access to my life." She nodded as if the distinction hurt more than shouting would have. I slid a legal notice across the table. It barred my parents and Tessa from contacting me outside their attorneys. My mother read it twice. "Family should not need court orders," she whispered. "Family should not arrange handcuffs for an audience," I answered. I left before she could turn remorse into another demand. For the first time, walking away did not feel cruel. It felt accurate. The criminal cases took 11 months to resolve. Grant pleaded guilty to conspiracy, wire fraud, obstruction, and falsifying legal instruments. He surrendered his law license and received 8 years in federal prison. Sergeant Vick pleaded guilty to unauthorized access and accepting bribes. The department revoked his pension credits tied to the scheme. My father went to trial, convinced he could charm a jury the way he had charmed clients. The second ledger, the airport luggage, and grandmother's video left little room charm. He was convicted on every major count and sentenced to 9 years with restitution orders that consumed the house, investment accounts, and nearly everything he had built with stolen money. My mother's cooperation reduced her sentence, but it did not eliminate it. She received 18 months in prison, followed by home confinement, and was permanently barred from managing a charity or another person's finances. At sentencing, she apologized to the families whose inheritances had disappeared. She also apologized to me. I believed she was sorry. I did not confuse sorrow with repair. Tessa held out until prosecutors added witness tampering based on a video encouraging her followers to identify and harass Adrian. Her platform suspended her channel, sponsors sued to recover advances, and the production company collapsed under debt. The day before trial, she pleaded guilty to conspiracy to commit wire fraud, filing a false report, evidence fabrication, and obstruction. The judge sentenced her to 42 months and ordered restitution. As a condition of supervised release, she could not monetize content about victims, witnesses, or the case. At her sentencing, the government played the opening of her live stream. The courtroom watched my parents grin as I crossed the porch in handcuffs. Then prosecutors played the muted section, the group chat messages, and her voice note promising to get rid of me. 1 million viewers had once made her feel untouchable. In court, that number became proof of how deliberately she had amplified the lie. Tessa asked permission to speak. She looked at me and said, "You took everything from me." I had that moment during sleepless nights, but revenge did not feel like triumph. It felt quiet. "I did not take your audience, your relationship, or your freedom," I said when the judge allowed me to respond. "You wagered all of them on a lie because you thought humiliating me would be profitable." Judge Bishop later restored grandmother's original trust. Recovered assets and insurance settlements returned most of what had been stolen from her estate. I kept the income share she intended for me, but I did not move into her house. With approval from the independent trustee, the property became the Evelyn Avery Center for Estate Justice, to be offering forensic reviews and legal support to families who suspected guardianship or probate abuse. The wooded parcel was preserved, just as grandmother wanted. Adrian donated archived business records to the center and then disappeared from our family's story, which I respected. Chief Hale attended the opening. So did the 2 patrol officers who had come to my house that night. The younger officer stood on the porch and said, "This looks different without the cameras." "No," I told him. "The cameras showed exactly what was there. People were just watching the wrong person." I still receive messages from strangers who saw Tessa's live stream. Some apologize for believing her. Some admit they shared the video before asking whether the accusation was true. I answer very few, but the center uses the case in public workshops about digital evidence and mob judgment. A viral story can create a verdict in minutes. Undoing it takes documents, patience, and people willing to preserve the truth. I never reconciled with my father. I exchanged occasional letters with my mother through a therapist with no promise of a future relationship. Tessa sent one message after her release asking whether I would appear in a documentary with her. I forwarded it to my attorney and received no second request. At 1 a.m. on the anniversary of my arrest, I stood alone on grandmother's porch. A year earlier, that space had been filled with police lights, laughter, and a million strangers waiting for me to break. Now the house behind me belonged to a purpose none of them could sell. I thought about the chief's pale face, the cuffs opening, and my sister's certainty that she controlled the ending. She never understood that a camera does not belong to the person holding it. Sometimes it becomes a witness. So tell me honestly, if your own family framed you for a crime and broadcast your humiliation to the world, would you ever forgive them? Or would you let the consequences speak for you? We truly appreciate you spending your time with us today. All characters, events, and situations in this story are fictional and made only for entertainment and educational purposes. Your behavior might show that when someone repeatedly chooses disrespect, you are not required to keep proving your love, your patience, and your loyalty at the cost of your own peace.